Coming up in our newscast tonight. Following North Korea's sudden change in attitude, Seoul convenes a National Security Council meeting. The plan now is to narrow Washington and Pyongyang's differences ahead of their summit by close coordination through various channels. Following through on President Moon Jae-in's pledge to better support innovation-led growth, the government plans to seek drastic deregulation on new industries and technologies. To break out of Washington's currency monitoring list, Seoul's finance ministry and the BOK announced plans to disclose details of net buying and selling of U.S. dollars. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome. I'm Daniel Che. After canceling the hotly anticipated inter-Korean talks, Pyongyang threatened to do the same with next month's summit with Washington. In response, Seoul's top office announced plans to mediate between the North and the U.S. to help narrow differences and ensure the historic event is a success. Arirang Shanghai correspondent Moon Gon-young starts us off with the outcome of the National Security Council meeting.
Breaking its day-long silence since North Korea abruptly called off a high-level dialogue within hours, the scheduled time, and threatened to pull out of next month's historic summit between its leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. South Korea's presidential Blue House said it'll actively perform the role of a mediator to bridge the gap between the two as they appear to have some difference in stance.
The members of the National Security Council Standing Committee decided to closely coordinate through various channels between South Korea and the US and South and North Korea so that the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit will be held successfully in the manner of mutual respect.
President Moon is traveling to the U.S. next week for a bilateral summit with his U.S. counterpart, during which a Blue House official said the South Korean president plans to convey what he and his chief aides have discerned about Pyongyang's position and attitude, and vice versa upon return from a U.S. trip. The Blue House and President Moon's key security officials do believe, however, that both North Korea and the U.S. are still serious and sincere about making the June 12th summit happen, and Seoul intends to continue discussions with Pyongyang to hold high-level talks that it canceled on Wednesday.
Members of the NSC Standing Committee reaffirmed their stance that the Panmunjom Declaration reached at the April 27 Inter-Korean Summit must be carried out without any disruption and agreed to continue consulting with the North to hold the high-level talks at an early date.
As important and symbolic the April Inter-Korean Summit was to the South Korean president and his team, it's actually the North Korea-U.S. summit that the president has placed his bet on in realizing peace and denuclearization process on the Korean peninsula. So it seems that the South Korean president, who's basically laid the groundwork up until this point, couldn't just sit back and watch Pyongyang and Washington drift any further and away from this hard-won opportunity. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, the Blue House.
U.S. President Donald Trump claims he is still ready to meet the North Korean leader while quoting, "We'll see if the summit still goes ahead." The White House also tried to distance itself from the National Security Advisor's recent Libya model comments, explaining that Washington is pushing for a different way to denuclearize the regime. Lee Seung-jae gets us up to speed with the developments.
The potential path to denuclearization and peace on the Korean peninsula now hangs in the balance after North Korea threatened this week to pull out of its upcoming summit with U.S. President Donald Trump. This is what Trump had to say about the matter on Wednesday ahead of his talks with the president of Uzbekistan.
We'll have to see. Can the Korean summit be salvaged? We haven't been notified at all. We'll have to see.
President Trump has said he expects the June 12 summit in Singapore to be a success. And until the North Summit threat and sudden cancellation of high-level inter-Korean talks this week, it appeared everything was falling into place. Pyongyang released 3 American detainees last week in a show of good faith, and President Trump praised North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for being excellent to the men who were imprisoned under questionable circumstances. However, despite the setback, the White House remains optimistic.
Look, we're still hopeful that it takes place. We think the same thing we thought yesterday, that it's an important conversation to have, and it's something that we're hopeful that it does.
With North Korea blasting Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton and his Libya model statements, the White House press secretary had this to say.
Look, again, this is the President Trump model. He's going to run this the way he sees fit. We're 100% confident, as we've said many times before, and as we all know that you're aware, he's the best negotiator, and we're very confident in that front.
For the time being, it's a waiting game. On the surface, South Korea and the United States seem to see the latest developments as a minor setback. But we'll have to wait and see if the highly anticipated summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump goes ahead as planned. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
John Bolton reaffirmed his commitment to making sure the summit happens. However, the top official also highlighted Washington won't back down on its stance of complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. Kim Mo-kyun shares with us his remarks.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton said that he's trying to stay optimistic and realistic at the same time following North Korea's summit cancellation threat. Speaking to Fox News Radio on Wednesday, Bolton said the U.S. will do everything it can to have a successful meeting, but it will not back away from its objective, which is the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. He added that during the recent inter-Korean summit, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to denuclearize, and if Pyongyang changes its mind, the U.S. will find out and the scheduled summit in Singapore will be pretty short. The U.S. official also said that he has spoken to his South Korean counterpart Chung Eui-yong on the possible reasons behind North Korea's sudden about-turn. The remarks come after the North's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Kye-gwan threatened that if Washington continues pushing the North to unilaterally get rid of its nuclear weapons, Pyongyang will not show up to the summit table. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The reclusive regime appears to be strengthening ties with its traditional ally. A group of North Korean top officials visited Beijing and even sat down for talks with the Chinese president. Oh Jung-hee zooms in on how two sides once again agreed to further solidify their friendship.
Following North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visits to China in late March and just last week, this time a North Korean delegation visited Beijing. Called a friendship visiting group, the delegation included senior party officials and was led by Park Tae-sung, the vice chairman of the Workers' Party's Central Committee. The group met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday. Noting that he shared detailed views with Kim Jong-un, President Xi said China hopes to further advance interactions and cooperation between Pyongyang and Beijing. The Chinese leader said he backs the improvement of inter-Korean relations, the planned summit between Pyongyang and Washington, as well as the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But it seems the most important part of the delegation's visit was to find out more about China's economy. The delegation highlighted that its China visit was to carry out what had been agreed between Kim and Xi, which includes learning from Beijing's experience in economic development, reform, and opening up to the world. President Xi said China supports North Korea's efforts to develop its economy. This follows North Korea's policy shift last month from simultaneous development of nuclear weapons and economy to a complete focus on building a socialist economy. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
In the domestic political arena, the ruling party feels the situation with North Korea must be looked at with patience, while the main opposition raised concerns that Seoul is being fooled again. Lawmakers also called in the relevant ministers to question them on the latest developments. Kim Mi-ji has the latest from Parliament.
North Korea's sudden turnaround has sparked concerns that it may put the brakes on the recent momentum towards peace on the Korean Peninsula. During a parliamentary briefing by the Foreign Affairs and Unification Ministries on Thursday, the main opposition Liberty Korea party said that the postponement of the high-level inter-Korean talks could be the start of a bigger headache.
North Korea and the U.S. are on different pages. If this is to continue, the two sides may not even hold talks. And even if they do, a significant agreement may not come out of it, and we could go back to the situation we saw last year. This will then put President Moon in an awkward situation and also put a crack in the South Korea-U.S. alliance.
North Korea has promised complete denuclearization, but like you said, there's a difference between how Pyongyang and Washington want this done. But we are aware that the two sides are in direct communication in regards to the talks. So we believe they will be able to coordinate, and through the South Korea-U.S. summit, we also plan to coordinate with the U.S.
Given the unpredictable situation, some lawmakers questioned about lifting the economic sanctions imposed on the regime so soon, saying that Seoul could see itself fooled. But all parties recognize the need to create the conditions for successful talks between North Korea and the U.S. and the implementation of the Panmunjom Declaration so that it leads to permanent peace on the Korean peninsula. In that sense, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea also said the leaders of the two Koreas should actively communicate through the recently installed hotline.
A hotline has been established, but there's been no talks between the leaders. As a mediator, Seoul has a lot of tasks. I see the need for talks ahead of the South Korea-U.S. summit.
Yes, I agree. The Blue House and the North Korean side will determine the opportune moment.
Rival lawmakers also warned that denuclearization isn't a matter that just concerns the U.S. and North Korea, but impacts South Korea as well, saying Seoul needs to play a more active role in facilitating the talks so that its security interests are reflected in any possible agreement. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in reviewed the government's initiatives for innovative growth and the progress made thus far. He emphasized the need for speed in reforming the nation's regulation, as well as efforts to make a positive impact on people's lives through the strategies. Hwang Ho-jun has the highlights from the Liberal Leaders session with government officials and business leaders.
Last November, President Moon Jae-in discussed strategies on innovation-led growth and how to cope with the fourth industrial revolution.
혁신 성장을 위해서는 신산업, 신기술에 대한 규제 혁신이 필수입니다. 민간의 상상력을 낡은 규제와 관행이 발목을 잡아서는 안 될 것입니다.
Fast forward 6 months, the South Korean president reviewed the progress of the administration's growth initiatives with government officials and local business leaders.
무엇보다 중요한 것은 속도라는 것을 다시 한번 강조하고 싶습니다. 성장과 고용의 한계에 직면한 우리 경제가 새롭게 도약하기 위해서는 혁신 성장에 반드시 성공해야 합니다.
President Moon noted the administration has been laying the building blocks for innovation by creating a friendlier environment for startups. It has begun regulatory reforms and has started providing tax support for innovative technologies and businesses, as well as preparing roadmaps for smart cities, drones, fintech, and smart factories. But the Liberal leader insisted that the efforts are still short of tangible results for the people and that the government strategy must improve people's daily lives. And to do so, President Moon asked the government to swiftly commercialize innovative technologies such as hydrogen-powered electrical vehicles, 5G mobile communication, artificial intelligence, and drones. A visually impaired working mother took the stage during the meeting to show the audience how the AI speaker she had been given has made her daily life and raising a child so much easier. President Moon also pledged that the government will try to speed up regulatory reforms to boost innovative growth, and that it will actively look for public sector demand for innovative products in order to create initial markets.
혁신 성장은 당연히 민간이 주도해야 하는 것이지만 정부의 적극적인 촉진 역할이 필요합니다.
Innovative growth has been one of the 3 key pillars of the Moon administration's, quote, people-centered economy, along with income-driven growth and fairness. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
To foster innovative growth and make sure Korea does not fall behind in the fourth industrial revolution, the government has been funding and providing incentives to select sectors. Won Jong-han turns the spotlight to some of these all-new industries and technologies.
What will the future of South Korea's industrial ecosystem look like? Kim Dong-yeon, the Minister of Strategy and Finance, reported on the progress of plans that have been implemented in the past 6 months to nurture new industries and create more small and mid-sized enterprises. During the presentation, Kim has outlined 8 key sectors where the government has decided to provide funding and other incentives to cope with the upcoming Fourth Industrial Revolution. And out of those 8, 3 model industries have been designated by the government, with related firms in the sector being given the chance to showcase their new technology. All of these efforts are being made to promote innovative growth in Korea under the new industrial ecosystem. First, the smart farm, where an AI-equipped big data sensor collects information on temperature, humidity, and CO2 to maintain optimum conditions inside a farm. Utilizing the information, it controls the farming environment through opening or closing the ceiling of the greenhouse, supplying water, and even spraying mist inside the farm. Next, the Smart Factory was introduced to monitor and control output in the assembly lines through using IoT technology, a possible means to counter falling productivity in the country's manufacturing sector and reduce the defect rate. The digital twin system can connect people and objects based on big data information, analyzing, predicting, and controlling reality in the virtual world. By applying the digital twin technology in the real world, the government hopes to solve urban development problems by running simulations on facility installation management and sunlight analysis, for example, to build a convenient and smart future city. The trial model for building a smart city is likely to be introduced in Busan and Sejong. These farms, factories, and cities, which are linked with smart IoT technology, are designed to exist in harmony within current industrial landscape, while bringing the country up to speed on the upcoming Fourth Industrial Revolution. 원정환, Arirang News.
South Korea plans to improve transparency in foreign exchange transactions. The move is designed to help lift suspicions of Seoul playing around with its currency to give exporters at home an unfair advantage. For more on what was discussed during an econ ministers meeting, let's turn to our Kim Hae-sung.
South Korea will start disclosing its currency market intervention records on a regular basis. At an economic ministers meeting on Thursday, the Bank of Korea and the Finance Ministry said they will disclose the country's net buying and selling of U.S. dollars. The government will reveal details every 6 months for 1 year starting from the second half of 2018. From then on, the government will disclose the details on a quarterly basis. The announcement comes after the U.S. government and the IMF repeatedly called on South Korea to release its FX intervention records and enhance transparency. South Korea, along with China, avoided being labeled a currency manipulator in the U.S. Treasury Department's semi-annual report in April, but was kept on its currency monitoring list. Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon said the measure will help remove unnecessary misunderstandings about the country's currency market operations and help build trust about its policies in the long run. Another focus during the meeting was on the use of liquefied natural gas or LNG-powered vessels. The government plans to gradually replace its towing vessels that use bunker C or diesel, which emit fine dust particles, with LNG-powered vessels that are more eco-friendly. It will place its first order for 2 LNG-powered vessels in August that will sail between South Korea and Australia. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries says it will support the adoption of LNG-powered vessels through subsidies and technological development. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Overseas card spending by Koreans hit a record high in the first quarter of this year on the back of soaring outbound tourists. According to the nation's central bank, purchases made on credit and debit cards topped $5 billion during the January to March period. The figure represents an 11.4% rise on quarter and a 26% increase from the same period last year. Around 7.4 billion Korean traveled abroad during Q1, up more than 8% on quarter thanks to the winter vacation season and the Lunar New Year holiday. However, during the same period, card spending by foreigners visiting the nation edged down 1% to $2 billion. The number of vehicles sold in South Korea increased, but the slump continues for production and export rates. According to the Trade Ministry, last month, car sales jumped 4.7% on year, but domestic vehicle production dipped 6.4%. Auto exports were also 8% lower than the same period in 2017 due to lower demand overseas and increased competition from rival brands. Meanwhile, GM Korea's sales plummeted by more than 54% due to consumers' concerns over its revival plan. Trade officials of Washington and Beijing met once again. A more amicable atmosphere was set for their latest sit-down in the U.S. Capitol, mainly because of President Trump's decision on Chinese telecom firms. Choi Si-young provides a closer look into round 2 of their talks.
The focus of the talks was on narrowing the trade deficit. The U.S. delegation led by Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, and Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer sat down with his Chinese counterparts, led by Vice Premier Liu He, to try and settle trade disputes. At the meeting, the U.S. demanded China reduce its trade surplus by $200 billion by 2020. The U.S. also requested the Chinese government to discontinue support for China Manufacturing 2025, China's blueprint for upgrading its manufacturing sector. China seemed receptive to the U.S. demands. The Chinese government is considering removing punitive tariffs on imported U.S. agricultural items. It is also reviewing whether to ease non-tariff barriers like import quotas, government subsidies, or custom delays.
We hope to not see the escalation of U.S.-China trade tensions. Of course, we have made preparations for all outcomes.
Such moves come in response to President Trump's surprising decision to lift the ban on Chinese telecommunications firms doing business in the United States.
We hope that the relevant departments of the U.S. side will take realistic actions quickly to resolve the case in a just and fair manner.
Adding to the positive outlook on the negotiations is the reduced role of hawkish White House trade advisor and harsh China critic Peter Navarro. He is participating in the discussions at the negotiating table, but is not officially on the U.S. representative list. He was on the official delegation at the first round of trade talks in Beijing. With China displaying a more agreeable posture and fewer hardliners in the U.S. delegation, experts are predicting a more positive result from these trade negotiations than from the previous round in Beijing. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
Seoul's Defense Ministry unveiled an innovation plan that reflects the current administration's state reform drive. It mainly involves expanding the number of women in high-level positions within the department. The M&D aims to increase the ratio of women in middle management from 11.5% in 2017 to 23% by the year 2022. Within the same period, the proportion of female soldiers will also be raised from 5.5% to 8.8% rather. It also plans to enhance the public's participation in various policy-making decisions, implement anti-corruption measures, and strengthen education to prevent sexual violence. Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, heavy rain has been pouring for days now. When can we look forward to seeing some sunny conditions?
Well, Daniel, we saw a pause in the rain as the rain clouds moved on to the east. However, another one is on its way, which will bring more precipitation until tomorrow morning. But by the afternoon, the rain should slowly clear up in some of the regions. Up until noon tomorrow, the central and the northern regions of Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces will see more rain of between 30 and 80 millimeters, 20 and 60 millimeters over in Jeollado provinces, while the southeastern regions will only get a light drizzle. So bear with it just a little longer. Although the nation is under rainy skies, it's hot and humid. It's hot beginning in the morning with 17 degrees Celsius, and Daegu and Gyeongju will wake up to temperatures of 21 and 20 degrees. The daily highs over in Seoul is expected to rise up to 21 degrees, with Gwangju topping out to 25, while Busan will see a high of 21 degrees. Now, after tomorrow, the weekend weather looks great, getting back to the comfortable readings that we would usually see in mid-May. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. As always, thank you for staying with us.